Hello and welcome to the top 3 builds for each class in Destiny 2. This is an updated version of videos we've done in the past, basically for the upcoming Edge of Fate release, but also for Ride of the Nine, for those of you who are going through and trying to get your Eternal Seals. Today we're joined by the GOAT Gmeiners, one of the most knowledgeable people in the community, creates some of the best entertainment videos in the community, hands down. G, what's good, bro? How we doing?
What's good? I'm excited for this video. I mean, Sandbox has been definitely shaken up a lot since at least the last raid, like since SE dropped. Like we're going into a new raid with exotic class items and all types of builds, and it seems like Bungie's really trying to open the Sandbox back up from just being prismatic to having things like Arc and Void and maybe Solar again. So yeah, excited to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think of the addition of Bolt Charge?
Dude, I thought it was sick. The only thing with Bolt Charge that was changed that I didn't like was on Prismatic. When you pick up an orb, if you have Faceted Purpose and an Arc Super, you get Bolt Charge stacks now rather than Amplified. And Amplified also got a massive buff. And so if you got Amplified still on orb pickup, I think it'd be way more beneficial. But yeah, Bolt Charge is still sick.
Yeah, Bolt Charge, dude. I think they cooked actually with the changes. Like, I'm so much more in favor of like new aspects and new things like that like make older exotics or like just other builds that are otherwise irrelevant like back in like at the forefront of the meta, which is so sick. So anyway, little teaser of what's to come, but basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna go Hunter, Warlock, Titan. And the first class that we're going to talk about today is actually the one that I've mained pretty much from Destiny 1 all the way through basically Salvation's Edge, which is Hunter. And last year, you know, as we were going through Pantheon and we were going through Day 1 Salvation's Edge, Hunters were like the hard meta with Lucky Pants, you know, and then followed by Still Hunt and the Golden Gun rotations that were just doing like crazy damage, like almost to the point where if you weren't running like 3 to 4 of them in your team, it kind of felt like you were throwing. And it's kind of funny like how things have shifted, because this year, I'm not sure how you feel about it, G, but it just feels like right now they've unfortunately kind of dropped to the bottom, and this happens with different, you know, classes over time. But right now it feels like Hunter, they have some really good builds still, but like I feel like Warlock and Titan are just on a different level with Prismatic. How are you feeling about Hunters in the current state?
No, I like you couldn't have said it better. I agree. The thing I always tend to say is like, if you need invis, if you need decent DR stacking, maybe the movement of a Hunter or tether, then a Hunter is great. Other than that, I don't really see a purpose. Like it just can't quite compete with Arc Slide build, Consecration build.
Yeah.
Like even the supers, like dude, Celestial, I kind of hate it because like I think Celestial is a good example. It takes a little bit of skill to hit your crit, and you kind of need to do some other damage swaps if you want to like swap the Celestial, pop Golden, then swap to another exotic armor going into a damage phase. And then just to have that super do less than somebody T crashing, which is very easy to hit and works against most bosses, you know, just kind of feels bad.
G, what is your #1 Hunter build? Because there are still insanely good builds. So what's your #1 overall Hunter build right now?
Yeah, #1 would be playing on Prismatic, mainly using a class item which has Heart of Inmost Light and Sight Arachne, so that you can get your abilities back and keep them up really quickly. And then every time you use your grenade, you're getting, I think it's 45% damage resistance with Woven Mail. And with that, I would tend to use aspects like Status Executioner, so I can keep going in and out of invis with basically any ability or some of my weapons that I use. And Ascension. I think Ascension is really good. It's super simple, super easy to use, and it gives you Amplified, which also got a massive buff. I think it was this episode where enemies just don't really hit you. So like in a perfect world, you can get Amplified, enemies aren't really shooting you. You can use your grapple to get Woven Mail so that if enemies do hit you, they deal 50% less damage to you. And then if you also want to use something like Threaded Spike, that severs, which lowers output of an enemy by 40%. So you can think of that as like another extra DR thing that you're stacking up. So it's really good, allows you to tank a lot, super easy to play with, and fits anywhere.
Yeah, we'll play a clip right now, actually. There was one that stands out to exactly what you're talking about. It was ATP in the Warden of Nothing GM, just face tanking the Grandmaster Nightfall boss solo, by the way. basically taking 0 damage to like the solar nuke attack that he does that pretty much will like insta kill you on most other classes. But with the boss Severed, with Woven Mail, with all the other DR stacking, it was just like it did nothing. And obviously on this build you have to rely a lot more on your weapons for ad clear, but like, you know, Ascension and things like that, being able to trigger Stylish Executioner, it still is really good, and you can use your grapple to like, you know, swing into enemies and get a melee off. But yeah, it's just crazy like how often you have Woven Mail available, just because, you know, grapple's on such a short cooldown, and like the tech you've talked about before of like, you know, you can grapple the floor, you get half your grenade back, and then all of a sudden with, you know, Inmost, it's like you pretty much have it up whenever you need it. So that's pretty sick. And then for damage too, you can just swap to Celestial, you know, obviously if you're rocking Golden Gun, and all of a sudden you have a top tier damage super as well. Which kind of leads me to a few disclaimers for this video. We will be talking about armor swaps, because as the game stands right now, that is the most optimal way to play, and I feel like not mentioning it is kind of a disservice to you guys, to try and help you guys become better players, or identify the best builds, or maybe think about ways that you could play certain builds that you wouldn't have thought of previously. Obviously swapping's not for everyone, but at least the knowledge is out there. And the second disclaimer as well is that all of the dim links for every single build we talk about in this video will be down in the description below. So if we mention something that sounds interesting and we talk about it, you haven't run it, or maybe you want a more refined version with the swaps to try out and get used to it, everything will be down below. So yeah, dude, that build's insane. I have multiple day one teammates that run it all the time. And yeah, it's just, I think it's easily like far and away the best hunter build right now. The next build for me, number 2, would be Mask of Fealty Prismatic. Do you have much experience with that build personally?
I know I haven't run that exotic much, but you're talking a bit about it. But yeah, I like CC. Anything that does crowd control is great in most aspects, unless it gets beaten out by something that can just nuke everything. So yeah, definitely a lot of potential.
Yeah, this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. It's like it's the ultimate CC defensive type of subclass, but actually it's kind of interesting because a lot of people play Mask of Fealty on Stasis, and I find that to be way more defensive. I like to play Mask of Fealty on Prismatic. So for those of you who don't have exotic class items or aren't able to farm it because you're a solo player, Mask of Fealty's insane for crowd control on Prismatic specifically, because one, the shurikens build your darkness bar extremely fast, and then you can use something like Velocity Baton. You're able to get a bunch of light damage ticking over time. You get your Transcendence ability up extremely quickly, and when you have Transcendence up, it's genuinely like a second super. Like the amount of CC, Mask of Fealty's refunding part of your shurikens, and with that in the Transcendence, like we know how fast the ability regen is with that. It's like a full auto machine gun of ice that you're just like sending everywhere, and it's chaining between enemy. It's crazy, dude. So a lot of it becomes like shatter ad clear. So it's kind of like a hybrid like CC ad clear type of build, which is, I feel like a lot of people haven't really tried out, but it's super strong. So again, down in the description, check out that build if you haven't tried it. It's really, really good. Highly recommend it. What about your third build for Hunter, G?
Third, I would also kind of mention, like, especially right now, recently, of the light subclasses, Arc, Solar, Void, I think Void is pretty much the only main one I would tend to use in the current sandbox and like the meta we have. But a good old Gerfalcon's Hallberg Void Hunter is still really, really effective. Plus, you can run that exact same setup on Prismatic with the right class item roll. Like, I think you just need Gerfalcon's Hallberg. You could run that with Heart of Inmost Light or Renewals, or, you know, whatever else kind of fits into the way that you want to play. Yeah. And it's just really good. It's really good, simple ad clear. On Void, you have Devour, and you can leverage Invis really, really easily. You can leverage Invis really easily on Prismatic as well, and even still get things like Restoration to heal you if you're running Golden Gun. So there's just a ton of different options to play with that build, and I'd say it fits in a lot of different situations if you maybe want to get a little bit more aggressive and not play as much around DR on Hunter. Yeah. That's a great shout too. I think another like chain off of that would honestly be, and it's something that I feel like is super slept on right now, is
just Orpheus rigs, like the good old tried and true Orpheus rigs in specifically like super ad dense content. So like Nether or in like Battleground GMs, like where there's just a billion ads grouped up. Like, dude, between the damage sharing and like how you get super energy from dealing damage paired with the regen from the boots, like you literally have your tether up like 80% of the time and you're just genning so many orbs. But yeah, Falcons is like absolutely top tier still. Like you said, like I'm sure some people are surprised like we're not mentioning like a still hunt, like Solar Hunter or something like that. I just feel like the bases of those subclasses has fallen pretty far behind not only Void but like Prismatic, especially. Like Prismatic just kind of does what those do but better with more benefits, more ad clear, more DR stacking. So yeah, I think Void's really the only one that really does something unique that Prismatic can't quite give you like fully, and that's the Devour Invis on demand aspect.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Yeah, so those are the top 3. Again, super strong builds, but maybe just not where they were last year with like Pantheon and all that. Like I'm sure you guys remember the peak with the Lucky Pants and how crazy potent that was and still hunt, but still amazing builds. If you guys are hunter mains, definitely check those builds out. So next up we have Warlock, and I'm going to start out with my number 1 overall build, and that is going to be Lightning Surge Prismatic Warlock, or the slide melee Warlock as people like to call it. It is just like stupidly strong. Like I underestimated this setup for way too long. My buddy T kind of gave me a nudge and was like, you should try this in GMs. It's actually insane. Because a lot of times people will still run like Well of Radiance with Speaker Side or whatever. If you guys want to just go through a GM and have the ability to ego literally any boss in the game, I'm not even kidding. Like the video you guys are seeing in the background, we have it from GM bosses, we have it from Ride of the 9 bosses, where you literally under contest are going up and just face tanking bosses, taking 0 damage, and using something like Lord of Wolves. Like that super enables that due to the 90% DR on yourself at base, not including other resist mods, faceted protection, anything like that. Like there's so much DR that you basically take no incoming damage, which means you can, as soon as you pop it, kind of do whatever you want with no risk to you. And then there's the melee side of it too, which is, you know, it's not as strong as Consecration, but as long as you have a Syntho class item, it's the only perk that truly matters, you can go through and absolutely destroy GM content. It functions just how Consecration does. You get 3 charges, you use that, you slide, powered melee charge, just decimates everything. It gives you Amplified, like you said, which also received a huge buff. That is guaranteed source of Amplified when you do the slide melee, which means enemies are less accurate targeting you. You also have Devour. If you're running Song of Flame, you also just have Restoration every time you pick up an Orb of Power with Faceted Purpose. The build is crazy. It's kind of like a slightly lower melee damage but higher survivability version of Consecration, in terms of like, as long as you're killing stuff, you can still get one shot. Like Consecration has a lot more DR, so you're not going to get that one shot potential nearly as much. But yeah, man, it's insane. Do you have much experience with that build? Have you been running it much?
I've used that build a ton. That is probably my favorite Warlock build to use currently. It's kind of like any place I can make sure it works. I know I'm surrounded. There's a ton of ads. I use it.
Yeah.
I love using it. So we'll do, for people in the clan, we'll tend to host a lot of events, and we'll do master raids and then 4-piece under, which is 4 pieces of 1900 gear. So you're already at -20 in a master raid, and then the 4 pieces take you, I think, all the way down to like -70 or something like that, -70, -80.
So some hardcore, some hardcore practice.
If you mess up, you're getting nuked. Yeah. And things tend to have a lot more health at that point. Like the enemies are skulls, not swords. They're like an extra tier. And even that build, like it made an encounter like Exhibition feel like a cakewalk when half your team is on these crappy relics that don't do any damage. You have to make up for all the ad clear that you're missing out because they're on relics. And so I think in an encounter like that, running slide build, I'd put upwards of like over 100 kills, which is still pretty crazy for a single encounter.
That's nutty, dude.
Yeah, it's just hard to die.
What about so like if you're running for example, like the exotic class item, what would you pair with Syntho? Because like I stand by the fact that that is like the must-have perk. The others are kind of like nice to haves, but like what would you target on that?
The two you can go for, and I honestly recommend everybody, if they are trying this build, to try both and see what they like more. Part of Inmost Light for the ability regen is always a no-brainer, especially in easier activities. But Lock just has really good uptime with their abilities. The melees come back super quick as is. Plus, if you pop Transcendence, you just get all your melee abilities like nuts anyways. So I would say trying out something like Assassin's Cowl is better because you have just as good ability regen if you're building Transcendence well, and then you have that Invis. And as you mentioned, there's a ton of situations where you can just get insta-nuked because you don't have as much DR in that build. So being able to start your ability cycle up, get Devour, get a first slide kill or something like that, and then approach things as somebody who's invis, it's just a little bit of a safer way to play.
Yeah, no, that's a really good shout. What do you have as your second best build at the moment? We have two more that we're gonna be talking about for Warlock. So what is your number 2?
Second best is just like tried and true. Warlock with Speaker's Sight. Like the healing grenades are one of the most busted thing in the entire game. I think if anyone remembers doing Day 1 Vespers Host, especially getting to Corrupted Puppeteer, that was an encounter where you're just like constantly taking damage, constantly roaming around. If you had 1 or 2 locks throwing those nades down as you dealt damage, it made it way easier.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that build is like you can still have really good weapons on. Obviously, you're not on a prismatic kit where you're nuking stuff, but you can run really good weapons like Tanasha's and Orb Printer, Tanasha's Inquire, or something like that. You're really potent. And then because you and your teammates are getting hit by this nade, you're going to be proccing Ember of Benevolence, which gives you a ton of ability regen. So you can just keep spamming your abilities, which is going to constantly give your teammates Radiant, which is still really useful in the mid game. You don't just need buffs for damage. And the heals are just kind of nuts. Like that thing will track you down really quickly in like random corners of the map. So it just keeps you alive, man. It's so good.
It's so good.
And you can also hot swap to like Cenotaph too. If you want to make ammo, you can also run healing auto in a harder encounter where you need more heals on demand. It's a very like flexible build.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Like you mentioned Ember of Benevolence. I think that's the biggest shout because like for those of you who don't know, that is a 600%. It's like 400% or 600% regen increase on your abilities to get your healing grenade back, which means you're healing your teammates more often, you get your turret more often, and it also works with heal clip weapons as well. So like if you guys are, like you said, if you're using the healing auto, if you're using something like Aberrant Action, which is a super popular weapon, like you can just proc those abilities constantly, have constant uptime. And one aspect of the build as well is you can swap to Sanguine Alchemy for DPS and have ×4 weapon surges. So like this week on Percy's, like not swap is a thing, but like just the general example would be like save in any raid encounter you could run Speaker Sight, like you're on Corrupted Puppeteer, you're running Speaker Sight, and then you swap to Sanguine for damage and you're running let's say like either Sleeper or 1K, which is nuking Percy's this week. You just have ×4 surges, which is more than anybody else in your fire team. You can put up crazy damage just by straight up firing your gun because you have more damage stacking than anybody else. And it's super easy. Like I'm telling you guys, we'll have, again, links to both of these. It's just one click of a loadout in your inventory, and all of a sudden you have both the benefit of add support, like you're constantly healing your teammates while you're running, and then when it's time for damage, you swap, you have huge damage numbers as well. And it can apply to so many different meta weapons right now, which I think is a super underrated aspect. And then for anything non-solar damage, you can run different surges for either your heavy or primary weapon to deal additional damage with double surges ticking on 2 different elements of weapons. So just a crazy setup that you can do that I think a lot of people don't take advantage of enough, honestly.
Even in a not swap situation too, I know another, you can like take that in a step further because like Sanguine gives you that 10% on top of the surges, as you mentioned.
Yep.
But then if you swap to Prismatic, so if you drop well, swap to a build with Sanguine and Prismatic with a super, I believe the super needs to match the weapon damage that you're dealing. Yep. And you also need Facetive Command. Anytime the enemy or the boss is hit by a darkness debuff, your weapon damage gets translated to ability damage, so you get another 10 or 15% multiplicative damage on top of that. which is just nuts. And it's also great even in an encounter like against Percy's, where you have not swap, so it kind of sucks. You're going to lose all your abilities when you swap, but it's going to happen anyways if you want to crank numbers by swapping to a prismatic build. So you kind of just bypass all the downside to not swap and get way more damage.
That's really interesting. I didn't even think about that. That's goated.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, so again, even if you guys aren't swapping, still super strong support build, but if you are, there's ways to just min-max every aspect of it, and you'll just be the best support and put out really good damage as well. Okay, so for third build on the list, what did you have as like your number 3 overall Warlock build?
I put number 3 as Getaway Artist, just plain and simple prismatic build. Yep. Secret of that, you just run Getaway Artist. You have typically the Stormnade. You consume that along with having the Bleak Watcher aspect on, and so you kind of fart out this little stasis turret that's going to help you hold down a position while also getting these Arc Souls on your shoulder. And so it's just a really easy build to play around. You can use it in any single encounter. For example, Arc Slide is probably way better, but there's encounters where it's just not really going to work really well because ads come in different waves and you're not always surrounded. It's just awkward. So that's a build that basically works no matter where you use it. And then you can also just crush something like Song of Flame so that whenever you get super low, you can pop that. You have Devour. Just plain and simple. It's super easy.
Yeah, I feel like that was the first build that really like took off with Prismatic when it first launched. Like even before Consecration, I feel like this was the one where everybody's like, "Holy shit, this is so busted," and it's still really good now. I think it honestly scales even better, like into day ones and stuff, where you need to play maybe more defensive a little bit, and you just need to stay alive. Like that build's insanely powerful. The number 3 for me was actually Geomag Chaos Reach spam, which kind of really, you know, got a massive buff this season, both with like the Delicate Tomb buff, where it got like the extra damage, and then also the addition of like the Blinding Turret aspect. They're both super strong. So now you have like blinding utility consistently. Just in general, Chaos Reach got a huge buff to how much super energy gains it gets from Ionic Traces, and then you pair it with something like Delicate Tomb, and it's like, you can legitimately get supers in like 10 to 15 seconds. It's kind of insane. So if you're really spec'd into it, it's super fun. I think it's only my number 3 right now just because the artifact is so arc-centric and they're so powerful this episode. Whereas, you know, maybe in Edge of Fate, it's gonna probably, like, we'll go back to the Prismatic Getaway for the third best build. But if you guys haven't messed around with that, it is incredibly strong, and I highly recommend it. Which just goes to show. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that build is just also really good in certain areas. Like, I want to say it's extremely potent against Tormentors, the Arc Super, Chaos Reach, obviously. So just in certain areas, like it's used for first encounter Ron. I think for the world's first solo flawless master Ron. I think the same person used it for the first solo flawless ultimatum Spire this week, where they were doing first encounter. So it's just really good at nuking certain things in the game.
Yeah. And I mean, it just goes to show, like, this is kind of what we were talking about. Like with Hunter, we kind of had to go back to some of the more like the 3.0 builds, like the ones that have been around for a really long time. Whereas Warlock, I feel like there's 3, 4, 5, even 6 builds that are all like super potent right now. They're good for both damage, they're good for both ad clear support, and you kind of always need to have one in team settings. Whereas like, I'm not sure you could say the same about Hunter right now. But like all 4 of the ones that we mentioned are just insanely powerful. So next up, we're going to move on to our final class. We've got the Titans, and I'll kick us off on this one. So this one's probably pretty obvious. Bolt Charge Arc Titan with Storm's Keep is just absolutely insane. This episode, it's so crazy with the Barricade translating weapon damage into bolt charge stacks as you sit behind your barricade. So you're weapon damage triggering bolt charges, but sitting behind your barricade builds bolt charge stacks quickly. So it's crazy, man. Like the amount of additional damage you get during DPS, the amount of free ad clear you get if you're playing around your bolt charge stacks, like there's just so much you can do with this class. And one aspect that people don't talk about nearly enough is the reduction of damage when you're standing behind your barricade from both like splash and AoE damage. Like just how good that is actually at defensive capabilities and keeping you alive. So like the perfect example this week, as you're doing the Ascend the Spire encounter in Rite of the Nine, in Spire of the Watcher, you get to that second floor where there's that Hydra boss that's just splashing damage from you from like 10 feet away. Without a barricade, you're dead in seconds. Like legitimately, it does so much damage to you. If you're behind a bolt charge barricade, it seems like hardly anything happens to you. And then because you're spamming bolt charge, it dies almost instantly. So it's obviously winning the #1 spot for me right now because the artifact mods are insane. You've got Defibrillating Blast, which allows you to heal while behind your barricade. You've got 2.5 times multipliers on the damage of bolt charge when it max stacks right now. So obviously it's going to fall off a little bit, but it's so good this episode. And I think it's still going to be really good in the future too.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how, like, without the 2.5x multiplier on bolt charge, like if teams are still going to want to default to one Arc Titan or not. But either which way, like you said, T-Crash is still really good. And I think the Rally Barricade, its effectiveness is it's super slept on in this game right now, especially for contest environments.
Yeah. I know, like, and I mean, not to mention that T-Crash, like you said earlier, is just like the highest DPS, like shut your brain off super ever. And you can do all of this without ever swapping off Cyrus. Obviously, if you're doing armor swaps off of Heart of Inmost Light, you're going to have abilities up more often, but like, you really don't need to. And this is just like the ease of use. As long as you're playing around your barricade, it's just insanely powerful. So that's my #1 right now. What is your #2 overall Titan build?
#2, super simple. Probably #1, like you said, if it wasn't for just how good arc bolt charges this season, Consecration Titan.
Yep.
Run it with Heart of Inmost Light, Synthos. Aspects tend to be knockout plus Consecration. Obviously, it just gives you the hardest hitting melee I think the game might like the game's probably ever seen, other than OG Bash, when you could stack up all this damage. It's just so easy to use. The healing from knockout helps you stay alive really easily.
Yep.
The supers are really good on it. T-Crash is really good. Axes are kind of slept on, but they're really good for dealing damage against Tormentors, breaking both their shoulders, even sometimes one-shotting them. And then with Consecration, it's also not just great for ad clear and dealing with like champions, tankier enemies. It's really good in situations where you know you're going to take a lot of damage. A boss is going to stomp you. A champion's going to hit you with something like Overload Retaliation. You can Consecrate and put yourself into this like almost full second long animation where you have a ton of damage resistance. So the build just kind of has everything. It has good ad clear, good nuke potential, good supers. You should be probably the most effective player in terms of ad clear, dealing with champions, and also probably dealing damage to a boss in the entire fire team.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I don't think a lot of people actually know about it, but the Consecration Slam animation gives you such crazy DR. It kind of feels like when you're in a finisher and you basically take no damage. I think we calculated it's like 86 or 87% like total DR, which is like, if everything's stacked with the build how it should be running, that's just insane. Like that's basically Song of Flame level DR, which is like pretty crazy to think about for an ability you have up almost all the time. And then once you slam, you get full healed basically from knockout as well, and heavy-handed generating orbs and whatever else. It's crazy. So and then you pair that with Facet of Purpose. If you're running it on like Berserker, you're getting obviously Woven Mail, or you're getting amplified and causing enemies to hit you if you're on T-Crash. And, again, you can swap to Curse of the Falling Star for damage. You can run your exotic class item for running, go crazy with ad clear. As soon as damage comes up, you still have T-Crash enabled. You swap onto Curus and just top tier damage just for switching an armor piece. It's crazy. Have you found, did you find the nerfs significant at all?
I think the place that you could tell, the nerf hit the hardest was just your ability to kind of one-shot champs in a GM.
Yeah.
I don't even remember if you would always one-shot them. I think you'd probably one-shot a champ in a GM, but, it's still just as effective for ad clear, and now instead of using one melee to kill, a champion or something, you might need, two, or two and a little bit of follow-up. But, no, it's still easily top tier.
It's so good. I guess going into the number 3 option, this one might actually take a lot of people off guard and a bit by surprise. But it's another melee build, Banner of War. I feel like ever since Prismatic came out, ever since, like, there's been a lot of like super hype Titan builds over the last year between Bolt Charge and Consecration being added. Banner of War got nerfed a bit, and people kind of like just set it aside and were like, it's not really good anymore. It is still used in world record Grandmaster Nightfall speedruns. It is still absolutely insane for healing, for constant DR, for single target melee damage. If you use it for that, that's super niche, but you can. Banner of War is still insane. I don't know if you like you've used it recently or anything like that, but it, like, watching, you know, special heroes and Sutex and Vendettas of the world play with it, like, it's still just so crazy. And the coolest part about it is it gets better the more of them you use. Like, when you're running 2 to 3 banners together, it's like having Resto times 2 and Woven Mail up like 24/7. So it becomes super hard to die, and it's super high damage as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like a roaming well, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it's also really good, and like you kind of mentioned, or we're leaning on towards, like, it's a very, you could play it in a very support role where you're running around offering healing to your team. I could definitely see that being something a lot of teams run in any day 1 encounter where you have to move as a group, and something like Surrounded just isn't as viable. So Consecration falls off, and a lot of other Titan builds fall off. But then, you know, you have this healing, and then any tangle that you get, if you throw it down or break it, depending on one of your aspects, which most people tend to run, you create these pulses that give Woven Mail to you and allies. So you're stacking up that DR for everybody. You're giving everyone this constant healing that roams around. And then, yeah, like, even for nuke potential, I'm pretty sure that's the method that people are using right now, which is very end game, but it's for like the Caretaker solo 2 floor, which is just crazy. You know, you throw a knot up above Caretaker and you do this like grapple melee rotation, which, again, high skill ceiling, but the damage potential is just there. It's still really good.
Yeah. The point is, like, we don't expect people at home to be doing that, but like the damage alone, the fact that it can do that, kill a raid boss in 2 floors solo, is pretty insane. So yeah, that one's really, really strong. I just have one honorable mention to kind of round out the video. That's the one-shot Peregrine Titan build. I feel like that is so slept on. With like on Void Titan specifically, when you're able to do you know, your barricade, you get an overshield and you go up and you just can one-shot literally any champion. I don't even think it matters what the weekly like singe is or anything like that. Like, you can just go in and one-shot champs regardless, and it's one of my favorite builds to run. I know people used it on like day 1 Salvation's Edge with like you know, Herald, like the Herald of the Witness encounter, where you know, there's those huge phalanxes that spawn. They would hit them, kill them in one shot, and you get your melee back. That's the craziest part about the buff to Peregrines, is you can just go again. When you kill a champion, you don't lose your charge anymore. It's like you keep it and you can just go to the next priority target. So you can kind of be that like person who's targeting the priority enemies while your teammates kind of clear out everything else. And since you have an overshield, which also got buffed recently, it is way stronger than it used to be, and you have a lot more survivability with it. So it's a pretty cool little build. I don't know if you have any honorable mentions like across any of the classes. Are there any other ones you potentially want to shout out?
Something I think is potentially slept on, which, you know, any Hunter mains who are watching this video, I urge them to try it out, especially if you're doing like a master raid or even Ultimatum coming out next or this week or whenever it comes out for Ghost of the Deep and Prophecy. Just running Synthos on Hunter with Threaded Spike, I think, is pretty underrated. Like, if you get surrounded and you throw that melee, it kills things pretty well. And anything that's like tankier, that obviously it's not going to kill like a champion or anything, but it's going to sever them, and you can get your abilities back really quick. Just kind of loop that, and it's very fun. And if you play it well, I think it's still pretty effective under power.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's an interesting one. I actually have had a couple of my day 1 teammates have been messing around with different builds with like Caliban, Surturacne, and things like that, and they've been using Threaded Spike because Threaded Spike does such like solid damage that you can kind of just throw one out there and like blow up a group of ads across the room, which is pretty sick. But yeah, so those are the top 3 builds for each class. Let us know down in the comments like what your guys' favorite builds that you're rocking right now. If you guys haven't tried these, again, the dim links will be down in the description. And huge thank you to G for joining today. If you guys haven't already dropped a sub on his channel, all his links will be down in the description below. He makes, seriously, I'm telling you guys, if you're looking for like Sir Demetrius level entertainment type of content, G does the craziest challenges. Highly recommend it. And he's genuinely one of the smartest minds in the community. So highly recommend you guys going over there and checking him out if you haven't already. G, any parting words, anything you're working on right now?
No, nothing crazy. Solo Witness has been kind of kicking my butt. So working on getting that solo done. Prepping for the next raid. And yeah, just always challenges and things like that to look out for on the channel. So yeah.
Nice. Hell yeah, man. Well, yeah, if you guys enjoyed today's video, like and sub down below. Share with your friends if you guys want to kind of gear up towards the next day one raid. And good luck with all of you chasing your eternal titles in Bread of the Night. But until the next one, guys, hope you enjoyed it. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.